Hey, this is Two Tails, and I'm your host, your man, Gavin Miles, and this show is going to break down hunting and fly fishing from a boots on the ground and flies on the water perspective. My goal is simple: keep it entertaining, practical, and help you elevate your skills to make every outing count. Yet again, I've got my camo on, everybody. I've got my camo on, and I've got my best friend here, Parker the Pronghorn. So, it's going to be a podcast about hunting. What specifically? I Spy, okay? We're talking a little game that we all know called I Spy. Not that I spy, but I Spy, okay? We're talking that everything lies within the eyes in the field, okay? I've got a couple of stories for you today. Unlike episode 1, I've got two stories. Let's jump straight in. Story number 1, we're looking at the extended archery hunt in 2025 for mule deer bucks, okay? We're talking mule deer bucks rutting in November in the thick of the junipers, through rolling hills, chasing does, trying to find themselves a little bit of action, okay? So I've got this group of deer that I want to talk to you about. It's a group of about 10 to 12 deer in total. There's a spike, there's a 3-point, and there's a 4x3, a pretty decent 4x3. And might I argue, the 3-point is also pretty big, okay? Not bucks that you really want to pass on here in this group. So me and my brother, I keep saying my brother and I are putting together a plan of how to get into this group of deer, right? They're a little bit below us on this mountain. We're up on the top on our glassing knob looking down onto this herd, and we really want to get into them. There's a bunch of good bucks. The action is happening, and we know from past experience that the bucks kind of let their guard down a little bit this time of year, and that's what makes them so fun to hunt, right? They start to lose inhibition and kind of forget their awareness, might I argue, right? They're a little rutted up. They're chasing the ladies. They're running up the does, and it's a little chaotic, right? So this group specifically was about 2/3 of the way up the mountain when we spotted them. Okay, there's probably 300 yards below us. We make a play to have Stanson, my brother, stay up on the spotting knob, looking down to keep an eye on him. I myself dropped down off the side of this ridge to stay out of their eyesight, right? The whole theme, I spy. If they can't spy you, you're in good hands. So I'm on the other side of this ridge, dropping down, losing elevation, trying to come in side hilling from them, right? So as I crest this ridge down the hill from them and start cutting back up, I'm realizing all the does are running around, the bucks are sparring, the does are on the lookout for danger as the rut occurs, because like I said, those bucks have one thing on their mind, and it's not necessarily safety, okay? Anyways, the landscape here, rolling hills, mountain peaks, ridge lines, but the vegetation here is the key in this story, okay? There's a lot of junipers, live junipers, tall junipers, small junipers. There's also juniper mounds. These mounds were built when they came in with chainsaws, the fire department, wildlife fire, to try and control any unfortunate event of wildfires in the area. So they've cut down junipers and piled them together in these, huge piles, 10-foot tall piles of dead junipers. And so I'm trying to use that to my advantage as I'm sneaking in. Well, sure enough, that came to fruition, and I was able to hide pretty well with these junipers. And sooner than later, I was just outside of bow range. Okay, we're talking, let me take it back. I was within bow range of some professional hunters. I myself wouldn't consider myself a pro hunter. I was probably 80 yards from the herd, okay? A little outside of my comfort zone, a little far than where I would feel comfortable with shooting, okay? So I'm about 80 yards from this group of deer. The does, like I said, have their heads up as sentries trying to find danger. And when you as a hunter are out of the direct line of sight of animals, they're less spooked, okay? So as I'm creeping in, I'm trying to keep these junipers an obstruction of some sort. Maybe it was a boulder, a rock, a bush, a tree, in the line of sight of the deer and of myself. I know where they are. I know where the group is, right? I can see different deer running around, and I know the general area. I'm trying to stay concealed because we all know out of sight, out of mind, right? At least for the most part, okay? So if you can stay hidden, you're less likely to spook the animal that you're stalking, especially in spot and stalk hunting, okay? So I'm there, 80 yards. I'm moving with the herd. As the herd moves, I move. As the herd stops, I stop. I'm trying to limit my motion, trying to stay concealed, trying to use the landscape, the vegetation there on the mountain to stay hidden, not trying to rely on this Kuiu camo despite its glory, okay? I love Kuiu. I'm a big Kuiu guy. As this group of deer gets closer and I move in, I kind of end up splitting this group in half. I've got the 3-point off to my right. I've got the 4x3 down below me with an uphill thermal. Great play. Great play of the wind. In episode 1, we know wind is king. I've remembered that for this, and nothing has spooked because of the wind, okay? I'm now just trying to stay hidden. This 3-point moves off, and this 4x3 is going crazy, okay? He's sparring that other little spike that's in the group. They're moving off pretty quickly, so I make this decision to turn and go after this 3-point that's with 2 does. As I get closer, I range him. He's in the scrub oak now, but I can see him broadside at 60. As luck would have it, and, confession time, I guess. As luck would have it, and as my gut would later pay the price for, I draw back. I've got a range on him, 60 yards. I felt decent with it. He was in the scrub oak, but he's in this clearing, or so I thought. I pull back, I draw back, I settle my pins, I feel good about it, I let it fly. I don't know if it was a deflection or a fallacy in my own form that caused this arrow to go awry, but I ended up hitting him, not fatally, but through his right back hoof. And yeah, pretty crappy of a feeling. It is heart-wrenching. I felt horrible. I don't like wounding animals. I like to be ethical in my hunting. But if you hunt long enough with a bow, there will come a time, there will come a circumstance, a situation in where it's going to happen. Okay, it's almost inevitable. I pride myself on practicing. I pride myself on calming myself down in a shooting situation to place a well-placed shot. Whatever happened, I don't know. Whether it took a deflection off the scrub oak as it passed through, whether it was me flinching, buck fever, you name it, you let me know. That would be very helpful for me to continue to better myself, right? That buck moves off with his does. We see him later on in the morning, and that day he's moving fine. He's not going to die, which put my mind at ease. Still felt horrible, right? Love these animals. It's never fun to injure one and to make them hurt and suffer. Let's talk story 1 takeaways. Story 1 takeaways is that the biggest thing in spot and stalk is that concealment works, okay? And no, I'm not talking about your camo. As I mentioned earlier, it's not in the Sitka, it's not in the Kuiu, it's not in the King's camo. Although if you buy camo, buy Kuiu, okay? There's your plug. It's more like a big game of hide and seek, okay? If they can't see you, they don't have their red flags going through their mind. Okay, they're at ease. They're not spooked. They're going to keep acting normal and natural until they spot you. Okay. It's critical to use topography to your advantage as a hunter. Topography meaning vegetation, meaning folds in the landscape, meaning rocks, trees, vegetation, changes in elevation. Like I mentioned at the start of this, I dropped down a couple 100 feet to go on the backside of this ridge to stay hidden from this group as I made my play around them, right? That's using topography, using the ridge lines, using those folds, the canyons, the eddies to sneak in close enough to the animal you're after. Moving with the landscape was also critical in that situation. As I mentioned, they themselves as a group of deer are masters at this. So I'm just trying to mimic what that herd's doing, moving at the same pace as them, moving through the same landscape as them, trying to find little paths, little game trails, right? I love finding game trails and analyzing where they cross through a mountain, because the game trails are the floor plan of the mountain, if you will. It's always the smartest route through the mountain. So look for those. Okay. That's story one. Those are the takeaways from story one. Story number two for you. I'll call it the 6-yard doe. Same hunt, extended archery hunt, 2025, this fall in November. We made a play on this group of deer. There were 3 does and a pretty decent 2-point, right? It was coming towards the end of this hunt. I was looking for the opportunity to get in and get a deer. And as we made our play, we followed the vegetation. We used the topography. We followed the landscape. We were on game trails. We were being as quiet as we can. Okay. We spot this doe for the first time at 30 yards, and we know we are right in this group. Okay. Adrenaline starts pumping, the heart's pounding, the blood's flowing, and call it flow state, if you will, for an athlete, right? I think hunters are athletes. Why can't we be athletes? So this doe starts at 30, then at 25, then at 20, then at 15, then at 10, and oh my goodness, then at 5, at 6. How close is this thing going to get before it's walking over me and running me over? I was starting to get a little nervous. It was right there. But it was just feeding. It was feeding in a natural and a normal pattern as it moved up this hill to a bedding feature, right? So how come that deer didn't spook even at 6 yards, even within a stone's cast, right? I could have tossed a rock and hit this thing. Why did it not run away? It could see us. Every time it moved those 5-yard increments closer and closer and closer, you could bet that she was always with her head up. Every 30 seconds to a minute, checking her surroundings. She'd munch on some grass, head up, look around. She'd look at us. She would look us dead in the eye. But she didn't spook, right? She wasn't rushed. She wasn't spooked. She wasn't worried because we were standing still. I should say we were crouched still, but we weren't moving, okay? That's the first takeaway of this story. After 6 yards, she got a little closer, maybe a step or two closer to call it 5 yards. Got a little spooked of us. The wind thermal had not switched and went to her, but became stagnant and licked her nose. Boom. Took off running, right? She snorted, and just like episode 1, gone with the wind. But we had fooled her eyes. We had won the game of I Spy. How did we do that? I'll tell you how we did it. Animals see movement just like we do. If you're in a still space, in a still area, there's no movement, things kind of start to blend together, right? Things start to mesh. You can still see objects, but in a little less detail. That's exactly how a game animal will pick up danger. They will look for movement first, and then they will look for detail second. So if you ain't moving, they ain't spying you, right? They're not going to see you if you're dead still. And vice versa. If you are moving, they're going to spy you, and you lose that game of I Spy immediately. So the key is, if you think you've been spotted, freeze, don't move, let their nerves come down off of alert and go back to their normal, natural, unrushed state. Some maybe main talking points in this episode, I would argue, is to play the blind spot of the deer, the elk, the animal. Okay, I want to break down how deer and how elk will see. Us as humans, we've got great eyes. Super grateful for them. Wonderful blessing, right? But we can only see about 180 degrees to kind of the sides of our head because of our eye placement. Deer and elk, I don't know if you've noticed that, but they're a little different. If you can see on Parker the pronghorn, his eyes are not set on the front of his head. So this changes the game for elk and deer. Elk and deer have monocular sight, meaning seeing out of one eye, and they have binocular sight, meaning they're using both eyes to look. Remember when I said the deer and elk, the animal, is going to find, they're going to look for distance and detail. Distance first, detail second. Distance is always with binocular vision. They're going to use both eyes to determine how far away an object is. Then they're going to use monocular sight, or one eye, to detect movement, to find the detail in the object they're looking at, okay? So let's talk deer and elk. They're a little different, maybe 5 to 10 degrees different is all, but a deer and an elk will have about 280 degrees of a field of vision because of their eye placement, right? That means they can see a little bit behind them, they can see pretty good in front of them, and they have really two blind spots. They have two blind spots, one directly in front of their nose and one directly behind them, behind their ears. Pretty hard to see that. I said 280, not 360. Okay, so 280 degrees, still fantastic vision. Okay, and their monocular vision, or their one eye vision, is going to be a side picture. So if they're feeding down, they can see to the side of them. They can't see directly in front of them, but they can see what's below them, right? So with their binocular vision now, that is what's really important as a hunter. If you can stay out of that side vision of the animal, being 280 to 300, 310 degrees, that's that difference. Is elk are typically 280 to 300, deer being 280 to 310. If you can stay out of that in your stock game during this whole game of I Spy, you will be a better hunter. You will find yourself closer to animals than you ever thought was possible. And you might even find yourself in that 6-yard radius, right? And I would love to hear it. Drop a comment if you have a crazy story like that. I would love to hear it. I'd love to chat about it. But remember, play the blind spots. If you're sneaking in your spot and stalk, I want you guys coming in behind the animal to where they can't see you as you're moving in. Concealment is best in motion. Like I said, movement is always easier to pick up than detail for these animals. So if you can stay concealed with movement rather than camo, if you're banking on your camo, I'm sorry, we can be better hunters, right? Bank on your movement first and their animal's blind spot second. So let's boil this all down to maybe one or two main takeaways from this episode, okay? Concealment works better than, I would argue, your camo. Concealment in motion. Stay frozen. And 2, play the blind spot. If you can play the blind spot, you'll be right in on these animals without them being able to detect you as a hunter, detect you with your motion, and you will be in a shooting opportunity. And I hope you capitalize, right? So thanks for tuning in. I look forward to hearing from you guys, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks, guys.